The storm had begun before sunrise, sliding in quietly over the valley like a living thing that had been waiting just beyond the horizon. By noon it had grown teeth. The sky turned the heavy, bruised color of wet slate, and the wind sharpened into icy blades that sliced across the open rangeland. Snow blew sideways, layering itself across fences and swallowing the familiar lines of the ranch. The rancher had spent the morning getting his cattle tucked deep into the South Grove where the wind broke against the old cottonwoods, but even then he wasn't satisfied. This storm wasn't a passing winter squall. It had the weight of something mean behind it, something that wanted to linger. When he finally trudged back toward the house, his beard crusted with frozen breath, he paused on the porch to stomp the snow from his boots. The boards beneath him creaked with a cold that felt ancient. He scanned the property out of habit. Barn, workshop, penned horses, the long road that cut between snow-filled fields. Everything looked quiet, smothered under the storm. But as he squinted through the flurries, a faint movement caught his eye far down the road. At first he dismissed it. The wind often whipped stray branches or tumbleweed across the fields. But this shape didn't blow. It struggled. It pushed forward a few steps, swayed, and then pushed again. The rancher narrowed his eyes. The snow was coming down thick enough to blur details. But there was no mistaking it. This was someone walking, someone small. A sick feeling twisted low in his gut. No one should be out in weather like this, least of all children, and he had the instinctive sense that children were exactly what he was seeing. He stepped off the porch and moved closer, boots crunching loudly in the whitened gravel. Each step brought the forms into sharper focus. Two figures, the larger one leaning heavily, the smaller slumped against them like a sack slipping off a tired mule. The rancher stopped breathing for a moment. "Lord Almighty," he muttered. By the time he broke into a run, the cold barely registered. Snowflakes stung his eyes, but he didn't blink. The wind hammered against him, trying to push him back, but he barreled forward, driven by a fear so immediate it tightened his throat. When he reached them at last, the older child, no more than 10, lifted his head weakly. His face was chalk white, lips tinged blue, eyelashes clumped with frost. The little girl draped over his back didn't move at all. The rancher dropped to his knees beside them, heart thundering. "Hey!" he shouted over the howl of the storm. "Hey, can you hear me?" The boy nodded once, a tiny, unsteady movement like he barely had control over his neck. He tried to speak, but only a broken, chattering sound came out. The rancher leaned closer, bending his head until his ear reached the boy's mouth. "Car, it slid off. Mama went to get help." The boy forced out each word trembling. "She told us." Walk toward the lights. Lights, he meant the ranch house's windows. They'd been stumbling toward safety, but at the pace they were going, they'd never have reached it before collapsing. The girl slipped a little further down the boy's back, and the rancher reacted instantly. He scooped her into his arms, wincing at the shocking cold of her body. She weighed almost nothing. Her hair, coated in frost, stuck to his coat as he lifted her. "God," he breathed, voice raw. "You two are frozen stiff." Without hesitating, he tore off his heavy wool coat and threw it over both children, wrapping it tight like a cocoon. The snow slammed into his now exposed torso, freezing through his shirt. But he didn't spare himself even a thought. He hauled the boy upright with his free arm. "Get in the house, you're turning blue," he barked, though his voice was more fear than anger. "Hold on to me." The boy obeyed, clinging to him with numb fingers that barely curled. Step by step they fought the wind as it tried to shove them sideways, tried to pull the coat from around their shoulders. The rancher kept a solid grip, guiding the boy, shielding the girl with his body, teeth clenched against the cold. The walk to the porch, usually no more than a half-minute stroll, stretched into something grueling. The boy stumbled twice, knees buckling, and the rancher caught him each time, dragging him back to his feet. Snow packed into the tops of the rancher's boots, numbing his ankles. His fingers burned with cold until they went numb altogether, but he didn't stop. He couldn't, not when he felt the faint, fragile breath of the girl against his neck, not when he could feel the boy, shaking hard enough that it rattled through his own arm. At last they reached the porch steps. He kicked the door open with his heel, stumbling inside and sucking in a deep breath of warm, fire-filled air. The warmth didn't hit the children. They were too far gone for that immediate relief. Their bodies simply sagged as if their strings had been cut. The rancher moved quickly, instincts taking over. He laid the girl on the sofa, wrapped in his coat, and helped the boy sit beside her before grabbing every blanket he could reach. He wrapped them thickly, doubling the layers, his hands moving faster than his mind could keep up. He knelt in front of the boy, gripping his arms and rubbing to force the blood back toward the skin. The boy's eyes fluttered. "You keep them open, you hear?" the rancher commanded, leaning close. "Don't you fall asleep." The boy tried to nod. He turned to the girl next. Her little face frightened him. Too pale, too still. He brushed the icy hair from her forehead, feeling a tremor of life beneath the surface. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice cracking, something it hadn't done in years. "Stay with me." As the fire snapped and popped, he worked tirelessly, checking their fingers, rubbing circulation into their arms, heating water for warm drinks, coaxing them to sip little by little. Each small improvement, each blink, each whisper, felt like a victory he'd fought tooth and nail for. Only when the boy looked up with slightly brighter eyes and whispered, "Mom, still out there," did the rancher pause. He swallowed, jaw tightening. "I'll find her," he promised. He gathered a spare coat, heavy boots, thick gloves he hadn't worn in years. Snowmelt from the children's clothes was beginning to pool near the door. The boy watched him, fear and hope tangled in his expression. "Please, bring her back." The rancher set his hat on his head and gave a firm nod. "I will." Then he stepped back into the blinding storm, not hesitating, not doubting, carrying with him the silent promise that he would return with their mother no matter what price the storm demanded.